deal to just sign off on it. So we're willing to agree to your last grievance procedure proposal, Article 5. Had pretty lengthy discussion on the burden of proof issue, and we walked through that. We'll agree to it, but we want to suggest a compromise on, instead of having on page, it's the second page of your page 15, under section 5.3D1, selection of the arbitrator instead of the moving party, always striking first to do the traditional coin flip. And that's for contract interpretation or for discipline.
I'm sorry,
Say it again?
what was the?
D, or it's E1, I guess.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's a strikeout of D, it's E,
Oh, I
under
see.
arbitration. Right now, the alternating striking of the arbitrator is the moving party, which would put it on the union for contract grievance, on us for any disciplinary grievance. We're willing to shoulder the burden on discipline, but we suggest a compromise of a coin flip to start deciding who strikes first.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that in concept. I guess my only question is, my experience, typically it's you and me getting on the phone and doing that. So how do we, what are the mechanics of flipping a coin in that scenario?
Don't tell these guys, but usually when that happens, I tell you, Graham, just flip a coin and I trust you. But that's me. I don't know that everybody else does it.
We need to recall this now.
Honestly, we're not gonna, you're gonna really, I don't know that anybody does that, but occasionally what I have seen other people do is say, well, get the parties together, one of you guys go or stand over and flip a coin, if you really want to do that. If it gets to that point, that we know why we have a grievance, I think, but.
You can actually FaceTime a lot of that now.
Yeah, that's true,
right.
that is true.
Oh,
Technology. It's never been an issue. I did have somebody had one that had like a random number generator kind of thing. To me, whatever matters. I mean, however, the mechanics, I don't really care. I think the idea being it's just random.
Yeah, that's fine.
The other changes, small changes, I think one was, that may be the only substance. We want to update the title, Vice President of Academic Affairs. What's your full title now?
Academic Affairs and Faculty Development / College Provost. It's correctly worded in the initial proposal that we provided.
Right, if we could update that. Yeah, I think kicked around whether or not to have, if you amend it, let us respond in that, but I think that kind of goes without saying. We feel like you don't need to add that language. If you amend it, we might feel compelled to give you a response whether you want it or not, frankly, but
Yeah,
I don't think we need to burden the contract.
typically, of course, what happens is, once we get our arbitration, it's 2 weeks before the hearing, we get on the phone and start talking about how to settle it, at which point, if not sooner, the substance of any such response, I think, would be conveyed anyway.
Yeah, so I don't.
We're not opposed to including it, but, not opposed to excluding it either.
Well, if you guys are on board with updating the title for the VP and doing something like a coin flip randomized, we can put language like that in that subsection 5.3E1. I think we can sign off on it with the caveat again being that some has references to discipline, things of that nature, which are still open. So it's possible we would want to tweak or rescind it if we can't reach agreement on that. That changes the substance, but I don't think we hold it up.
Right, I think we would have the same caveat. We have one question about the title thing though. I mean, periodically titles change. So let's say the title changes. Would your view be that it's just sort of the same person, or that we just come back and need to just change that in the contract, or you're not allowed to change titles without negotiating?
I think
We're talking about the level two.
It'll be the chief academic officer.
Oh, you mean that title, okay.
I think it would be less form, more substance if there's a title change, but it's whoever's in that kind of position.
Right, the chief academic officer, since the chief academic officer is responsible for faculty and academics. So whatever the title would be, that would be the person.
Right. So we put in a title and it happens to change over time. It's the kind of thing that I would clean up for future negotiations, but it's not worth it wouldn't change the substance. There would be
Right.
somebody who's over the academics who would go to them. Same thing the rail brought up, president is referenced. If there was a vacancy or an interim, should we address that? And I don't think we need to address it. It's just whoever's overseeing, handling those duties at the time.
Okay, yeah, I don't think any of this is, a big deal or significantly controversial or anything. So I think we maybe all have a little bit more question or discussion about discipline as well, but perhaps while we're thinking about that, you guys want to get clean copies of those changes printed up? I think we can probably sign it with, and we would
Have the
all
Word
the same-
document, can
all the
you
same
forward
content.
that or make?
Oh,
the
yeah,
change?
yeah, I will, yeah, let me make sure I write them down. So we've got the coin flip, the DPAA / college provost, and is there a third thing?
No, I think that was it.
Okay, so title change, coin flip change. Okay, so we'll make those, send them to you currently with, Ms. Bender to get printed. And then we can sign off on that shortly. Okay, so on the discipline thing, I think there was a little bit of confusion in our discussion. So let me start by kind of talking about kind of my experience and how this works in K-12, and as far as I can tell, seems to be how it tends to work in colleges. And maybe I'm extrapolating too much from my prior experience here, but the way it works in K-12 at least is, you have, your instructional personnel, because there aren't really certificates or contracts for the non-instructional personnel. The instructional personnel, they get a professional services contract. And if they are, for whatever reason, hit with a suspension without pay or a termination, they then have the ability to, under statute, to do a Section 120 hearing. They can go before the school board. They can go for a DOA hearing, and then the school board decides whether or not to accept the findings of the ALJ in that case, or you can do a grievance and go to arbitration. Some contracts don't restrict. I would say probably a majority do. You don't get to try all three venues. You pick one and you go with it. But this never seemed to create this concern about, okay, well, then what does this mean? You have your professional service contract, which is kind of like a continuing contract, or doesn't it? Those seem to be kind of separate issues. And that also seems to be the case in most of the college contracts we look at. There's, okay, yeah, here's the continuing contract process, blah, 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 you get a continuing contract. Okay, 10 pages further down in the discipline article, just cause, no mention of excluding it from the grievance procedure, but then there's also, indication of these sorts of sort of other venues for that. And there just doesn't ever seem to be, there doesn't seem to be a conflict there, or an understanding that using one means you don't have it. So we were just sort of not sure what to make of that sort of, I don't want to say position because you were just kind of talking out loud, but that idea that having just cause means you don't have continuing contracts. We're just having a difficult time wrapping our heads around that.
I don't know if it's the standards, like terminology different, obviously, but I don't know that substantively, in my mind, there's not a lot of difference. The main difference is the way challenging decision to terminate contract. One, as you note, you can go through arbitration under the discipline just cause terminology, and another you're going through the K-12 Chapter 120 hearings. Here, same type of procedure. The board procedures and hearings where we have to establish one of our reasons, which primarily look a lot like just cause. If you're probably to flesh out the definition of it. Definition of just cause might be a little more broad, or Probably not. It's probably really about one and the same, quite frankly. I think it all works out the same. It's really just that procedure. So, and if I understand your position correct, we want to have the ability to take either route. We understand that. I'm not sure we would agree to that, but I understand that's where it is. I think historically, a lot of places just throw discipline in with just cause and arbitration, but at the same time, we like what we have in terms of our secure contracts and professional service or continuing contract status. We don't want to mess with that. And I always thought it was just sort of interesting. And I don't know that it has a big an impact other than who decides the issue at the end of the day. But when we suggest that, well, if you really want just cause, why do you need a new contract? We get a lot of pushback on that.
Yeah, so I guess from what I see in other contracts, they're not having a continuing contract seems to sort of be like being on a probationary period of however many years. And then you go through the process to get a continuing contract, and then you have this thing called a continuing contract, which essentially just means the just cause language in the contract applies to you.
Well, and just to be clear, one of the things that we're not proposing, because I do see this floated as an idea occasionally, is let's do away with continuing contract, convert everybody to at will status. I mean, you don't get just cause or anything, which you have in some segments, but typically don't have in this circumstance. We're not proposing that. But, so, in my mind, the biggest difference is who makes the decision in the end, whether it's an arbitrator versus DOA and board, that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, having heard a little more exposition on kind of the purpose and rationale for those pieces, why don't you give us a few minutes to talk about it? I'll make the suggested changes. I'll send it over to you in Word. And I'll also send a clean copy for, I forget her
Wants to
first
step
name,
out
Marissa.
there.
Marissa.
We're not ready for this, so I mean, okay,
No, you're talking about for the grievance?
for the grievance, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's step back out and make a change, send that, and we'll sign it, and then be done, and probably, unless you guys say, like our disciplinary.
Yeah, bring it back, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Right?
The discipline one or the grievance one? We'll bring back the grievance one, right? On the discipline one, if your position is we want to have both options, then we would need to, we're not gonna be in position to have a proposal for you today on beyond what we already have.
Okay.
Yeah, we can have time on that. Yeah, correct.